I was going to fart, but actually I decided not to. All right.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I know.
We're in a small room.
We are in a small enclosed room. I did. I was like, oh, no. I won't do that to you.
I appreciate it.
But speaking of Mike's movie reviews, we
Okay,
weren't speaking of it, but we are now. I watched a new horror movie for, shout out to the folks at home. I know they've been asking, where's Malibu Mike's latest movie reviews? We need more. I've been working hard and I need to get back into my, I actually have a load of really good horror movies on my to-do list. So I'm making it, but my most recent horror movie, oh yeah, by the way, this is the That Chapter podcast. Welcome, I'm Mike and with me is Keith.
Oh.
Just get that out of the way. I watched Sinners.
Oh yeah, it's good.
It's good. I liked it. So yeah, it's an interesting movie. So Sinners came out earlier on in 2025, and people were just blowing their load over it. So I watched it and I thought it was like pretty good. Okay. I did think it was a bit overrated when I watched it. So the basic premise of the movie is it's set in like the 1920s or like 1930s, then in Mississippi, and it's two brothers coming back home after like making a load of money up in like Chicago. They come back to their small Mississippi town. Twins, both played by Michael B. Jordan, who's a great actor. We were watching him in The Wire and Friday Night Lights, two great shows when he was like a kid in both of those shows.
I always find it mad when they have actors play like twins. Like, just get twins. It's kind of like,
you know, do you think it's twin? Is it? Are we talking twin stolen valor, Keith?
It just seems like a lot of effort when you could just get, like, do you know, like Lindsay Lohan in the.
Yeah, but how often do you find twins that are actors? Like, and both have good acting capabilities.
Yeah, I guess that's fair.
The Olsens are like the only twins I can actually think of who were famous. Do you know any other twins?
No.
Leave it in the comments, folks. Other famous twins. But anyway, so they come back and they're gonna open a juke joint or something. It's like basically a bar and music place, but only for like black people in their area. And they go there on opening night and maybe there's vampires in the area. I'm trying to think who's in it who I would know. So Michael B. Jordan, he plays the two leads.
Yeah.
Haley.
Does he get paid twice? That'd be cool.
That'd be, I don't know. Yeah, maybe he does. Ask him. Haley Steinfeld plays one of Josh Allen's wife, as I know her now. Keith has no idea who Josh Allen is.
No.
Okay. And then Jack O'Connell. He's the villain of the movie. He's an Irish vampire.
Cool.
It's great.
So there is vampires.
It's a vampire movie.
Yeah, because I couldn't really figure out from I'd seen like one of the original trailers. I was like, I don't know if it's supernatural or it's like given that.
It is supernatural.
Excellent. Okay.
So essentially they, spoiler alert, but they have to board themselves inside the bar and there's like vampires outside trying to get in.
That sounds like a great night.
It's kind of like a siege type thing. Jack O'Connell is, he's another actor. He's actually another actor who we kind of watched when he was young and he's kind of grown up. He was in Skins.
Oh, yeah.
Remember, maybe he wasn't in the first version of Skins, but when they got the new cast, remember, it was like there was 2 seasons of Skins.
Yeah.
With the Nicholas Hoult.
Yeah, that was the first season.
That was the first season or 2 seasons, I think. And then they kind of like rebooted it with like a new cast group, I think, in like the third season or something. I think he was in that. He's a great actor.
He's a good actor, yeah.
He's really, really good. He does, he has kind of like, for majority of when he's talking, he's a really, really great vampire. He has this kind of like southern accent, but then he also, it seems like the movie hints that he came from Ireland originally.
Okay.
He was like a pagan vampire back in the day.
Cool.
And then he kind of left. And he does like the Rocky Road to Dublin in like an Irish, he sings like an Irish accent. He does it really, really, I wonder if he has like Irish, because his Irish accent's really good.
That's some family from Ireland.
It was O'Connell, so I presume probably is
makes sense.
an Irish name. Yeah. So I thought it was a good movie. When I watched it initially, I was like, people are fucking a little bit overrated. But the more, it's kind of one of those movies, it's growing on me a lot. The more I think about it, and the more it's like, actually, that movie is really, really good.
It's a slow burner.
It is. For me, it was a slow burner. The soundtrack to it was great. I thought the performances were really, really good. The setting was just cool. Yeah, I'd recommend it, honestly. It's not like, I still probably would say it's a little bit overrated.
Yeah.
But it's very good.
Okay. How many thumbs up?
I would give it 2 thumbs up.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. It's one I would watch again.
Yeah.
That's your criteria. Would I watch it again?
Yeah. Have certain criteria. I love like the rating is like 1 or 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, exactly. It's good or it's not good. Right? That's it. That's all I need to know. Is it good or not? So this is good.
Okay,
is it great? No. But it's very good.
Okay.
Maybe it's great. Maybe I'll watch it again and I like it even more. It has some really, really cool scenes in it. It's like it's a really weird mix between like black culture and then Irish culture.
Right.
Because there's like both types of music in it. It's really interesting, but it works really, really well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I like that setting when you trapped in the bar. That seems like I'd love that. Like, I think we got trapped in the bar before it was like snowing.
Oh yeah, I remember that when we had a blizzard here. That was really great.
That was a good day. That was a great day.
Good times. And speaking of the supernatural, Keith, how's your haunted house?
good. Nothing mad been happening.
Really?
Actually, I had a bit of a cryptid of my own nearly. By the way, this is what we're talking about today. We're going to be talking about cryptids.
We are.
But so this isn't haunting, but it was just freaked me out. So I got up in the middle of the night to go down and get a glass of water, and I came down into the kitchen. I just turned the light on. Something caught my eye, and I looked up, and my God, man, it was the biggest spider I've ever seen, like descending from the roof towards me. I had like dug out of the way, and it landed like it was so big. I heard it land on the ground, and I could hear it like walking.
Was that like a house spider?
No, it was like a like a false widows nearly.
It was like,
it was like black. It was huge. It was nearly like the size of the palm of my hand. Had like a red mark, but his legs were like black and yellow and real shiny.
Whoa, this is inside your house?
Yeah, man.
Wow, because I've seen the false widows. They're like everywhere nowadays. I think they're like an invasive species, but I only ever see them outside.
Yeah,
not really indoor spiders.
It was Well, I put them back outside because usually like I'll rehome the spiders. Like a spider realtor. I'll move them around the house to where like the flies and moths are. But this one, I was like he was so. I should have been charging rent. He was so big. So.
Well, Keith, you rehome them, not me. I send them straight to where they belong. Straight to hell. No survivors when they're in my house, I'm telling you.
They do a good service. The smaller ones, they do a good service. They keep the flies away.
I'd rather deal with the flies, honestly.
Okay, fair.
Flies are just annoying.
Yeah.
Spiders actually my wife gets freaked out by them anyway, so it's kind of like, all right, buddy.
Yeah.
Time to go. Say goodbye from life. All right, so speaking of the supernatural and speaking of cryptids, today for you folks, we have it. We're diving into it once again. The wonderful and mysterious world of cryptids. It's been a while since we've done cryptids. Which one was the Mothman the last cryptid? No, Spring Heel Jack, actually, I suppose, was the last technically.
Yes, yeah. He was, yeah. So Spring Heel Jack, and then I think before that we did... I think the very first one was the Poplic Monster. We did a couple. That was we did a cryptid off. Yes.
We had multiple cryptids in that one. But yeah, we talked about the Poplic Monster, the Goat Man. Then we did Mothman. Yes.
Yeah.
Spring Heel Jack.
Yeah.
I feel like we might have done another one, but I can't think what it is right now.
There was one in there.
Okay, so I love cryptids. I find cryptids absolutely fascinating. I had never heard of the Van Meter visitor before. And I thought I'd heard of all of the cryptids.
Yeah.
Keith, you'd really hit it out of the park, I gotta say. Well done to you, buddy, on finding this story, because it's a crazy story.
It is, yeah.
And I'm surprised this isn't way more well known.
I know, it's a great story. It's so good. And like you, I'm fascinated by cryptids. And when we're coming up with ideas for podcasts and scripts and stuff, every now and again, I'll do a little search of cryptids, and I was like, we must have done them all at this stage. And then this just came to me.
Yeah.
It just like popped up. It's like, oh, okay. I looked into it, and there's a book about it. It's amazing. It's a great story.
We should say, what's the story? What's the book, actually? Just shout out to any of the listeners who want to learn more about this very underreported but highly interesting cryptid. Keith, what was the book you used as your source?
It's called The Van Meter Visitor, A True and Mysterious Encounter with the Unknown, by Lewis Voss Nelson. It's three authors: Lewis Voss and Nelson. Yeah.
Okay, or just Lewis Voss Nelson.
Yeah, I'll tie it into one guy.
So yeah, as we said, we've covered quite a few: Public Monster, Shadow People, Fresno Nightcrawlers, Saucy Spring Heel Jack, and of course, friend of the podcast, the Mothman. Now, as we've mentioned this before in similar episodes, for those of you who are new to the class or who skipped those episodes, which I know none of you would do because you know the consequences of skipping an episode of the podcast, here's a quick refresher. A cryptid, right, as we all know, is a creature whose existence has been suggested. There's been sightings or maybe tracks, but hasn't been proven to exist by quote-unquote science of freaking nerds. Now, of course, there's some cryptids that were legendary creatures, but they did turn out to be real. Komodo dragon was one. The gorilla was also supposed to be, they'd say there was these hairy mountain men.
Yes, yeah,
It was supposed to be like a long, extinct species of human, like Neanderthals still lived in these mountains in Africa, and it turned out, it's actually just gorillas. Fun fact, the mountain gorilla was only discovered officially in 1902, which is a year before today's story takes place. So therefore, our cryptid could be very much like the gorilla, discovered at the same time.
I love how, back in the day, how they proved it was, they were like, no, there's definite sightings, and I was like, no, feck off, there's definitely not. So they go to these countries, and because they're going on boats, it takes too long to bring them back. They just shoot them, and they just drag the bodies back. And go, see, I told you.
Look what I killed. yeah. So maybe there are still cryptid legends out there, just waiting to be found. After all, who doesn't love a good mystery? cryptids, you have stuff like Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster. For me, it's sort of the same reason as ghosts. I've never experienced ghosts. Yeah, and also ghosts. I don't believe they're real either. I don't necessarily believe they're real, but I want them to be real. I love the mystery. I love it. It adds a bit of flavor to this world we live in.
This mundane existence.
Like, you ever think, what an interesting world we live in?
Yeah.
Let's make it a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, why not? Don't burst our bubble.
Exactly. So today we're focusing on a cryptid that's definitely not as well known, but trust us and trust Keith, it is one of the creepiest. This story is very, very creepy.
Yeah.
So buckle in, buckaroo. This is a fantastic story. Let's get into it. So, the Van Meter Visitor. This bizarre creature terrorized a small town in Iowa, was shot at by multiple upstanding citizens, and in the end, the town had no choice but to seal it away, deep in a mine shaft, forever. This sounds like a legend or a book. This is a true... Well, I mean, it's believed to be a true story.
Yeah.
There is like multiple sources and newspaper articles on this very thing, but it sounds like crazy. This is what I mean when I say, like, how is this not a more well-known story?
I know, right? Yeah, it's crazy.
So this is the story of the Van Meter Visitor. Let's give it a go.
So before we dive into the heart of today's story, let's set the scene a bit. So the early 1900s in the US is often referred to as the progressive era. So a time of big ideas, the industrial boom and tech breakthroughs. Henry Ford's assembly line that revolutionized how things were made, making products, especially like cars, faster and cheaper to produce. There was a explosion in inventions also. We're talking about the vacuum cleaners, electric washing machines, and most famously, the Wright brothers inventing the airplane in 1903. Also, just a quick little side note. Isn't it wild that the first airplane flew in 1903 and then just 66 years later, Neil Armstrong walked on the moon?
Yeah, it's pretty wild when you think back to like thousands and thousands of years of human history, human evolution, whatever you want to call it. It's like kind of nothing. I mean, if you like compare the ancient Egyptians with like the ancient Romans, even though it's like 1,000 years in a difference, they're more or less kind of the same.
Yes.
Like I noticed that like the Romans invented a lot of cool shit, but technologically there's not really a huge difference.
Yeah.
Like if they went to war with each other, it'd even...
There wasn't giant leaps. And,
But then if you go like another 1,000 years from the Romans to like the medieval knights, again, sort of the same.
Yes.
But then if you go another 1,000 years, you're talking about Marines and like Delta Force and bombs and nuclear explosions. It's like, what the hell? Technology just like went whoop.
It just shot up.
Straight up. But you know what? It kind of feels like we're plateauing a little bit.
It does a little bit.
If you think of like the difference between the 80s and the 2000s, or okay, let's say the 60s and the 80s, technology seemed to like, in the 60s, black and white TVs, and then you went to like computers.
Yeah.
But if you think of the difference between 2025 and 2005, is there that much like technological difference? Really? Yeah. I mean, I know we have like iPhones and the internet is better and
AI,
HD and AI, but overall it's like the world feels like the same place.
It's not as amazing. Yeah, and I think that's the thing. Like this was an era where it probably felt like anything was possible, even monsters lurking in the shadows.
Yes.
So of course, stories of monsters and cryptids didn't just pop up out of nowhere. These tales go way back, rooted in indigenous folklore and carried over by immigrants who arrived chasing the American dream, bringing with them superstitions, folk remedies, omens, rituals, and all sorts of supernatural beliefs.
So, our story today takes place in the town of Van Meter, central Iowa. But that wasn't the only spooky spot in Iowa back then. Here are just a few tales locals were already whispering about. There was already creepy stuff happening right then and there. The Banwell Terror Bridge in Fort Dodge, Iowa, also called the Banwell Bridge, has a chilling reputation. The most famous tale is about the spirit of a woman in white from the 1800s. According to legend, she threw her 3 children off the bridge as a train passed below, killing them instantly. And then, she jumped to her own death. Over the years, locals have claimed to have seen her ghost haunting the bridge. Drivers will say she'll try to pull you out of your vehicle unless you roll up the windows and lock your doors. People have also reported hearing voices, seeing orbs of light, and even hearing a woman moaning from underneath the overpass. Was there ever any condoms in there?
Yeah, that could be something else.
Yeah, that could really be anything. Some even found handprints mysteriously appearing on their cars after crossing the bridge. And if that's not disturbing enough, others have reported seeing a werewolf-like creature near the bridge, described as massive, bear-sized, covered in thick matted fur, walking upright on 2 legs with a long, pointed snout. The ghost and werewolf sightings don't appear to be directly connected, but it's a great example of how supernatural stories tend to snowball over time. Maybe it's just local legends evolving through the word of mouth. Or maybe, just maybe, places like this really are magnets for strange activity. I mean, it is called Terror Bridge. And what are the odds a place called Terror Bridge would coincidentally have paranormal activity associated with it? Like, it's not high.
Right?
They just happen to name it Terror Bridge and then shit happens? I don't think so.
Exactly. I do think that there's these areas of hotspots for supernatural, paranormal stuff to go on. There's the tale of Iowa's Great Lakes region, where a cryptid was said to dwell in the lake of Okoboji. According to an article in the Vindicator and Republican newspaper from Esterville, Iowa, sometime in the early 1900s, a couple had a strange encounter on the lake. So this is what the article said. They saw something. They have no idea what it was. It might have been a sea serpent, or it may have been some kind of fish that had grown to unusual and extraordinary size. They were out in the lake in a boat when they noticed a short distance away a terrible commotion in the water. The thing, whatever it was moving quite rapidly close to the surface and had the appearance of being as large as an overturned skiff. It made waves so large that Mr. Bartlett was alarmed, fearing they would swamp his boat. He does not pretend to know what it was and declares that he would not have believed such a creature could exist in the lake had he not seen the commotion with his own eyes. Ooh. So these are just some examples of the paranormal sightings and cryptid folklore being told in Iowa at the time, but all of them pale in comparison to what was about to descend on the quiet town of Van Meter.
In the year 1903, about 15 miles west of Des Moines, in the little town of Van Meter, Iowa, well, it was your classic small town setup. A couple of hundred people, a main street, some farms, a river, and, this is important later, a few old coal mines. The town was established in 1877 and named after Jacob Van Meter, a Dutch settler from the Netherlands. So, okay, not the most fascinating origin story so far, but sure, it gets the job done.
Here's something that did catch my eye though. So the first ever death in Van Meter was actually also the first in the whole county, and was a man named Mr. Coffin.
That's interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
You couldn't write it.
No.
Although I did.
Very nice. Anyways, moving on. In the early 1900s, Van Meter was mostly farmland. Grain, livestock, the usual. There was a flour mill powered by the nearby Raccoon River, and for a while, coal mining was a pretty big deal. The first shaft was sunk in 1878, and it helped put Van Meter on the map. But by the time our story takes place, the mines had already shut down. You see, the workers had started asking for crazy things like basic safety and a living wage. Babies, yeah. So instead of negotiating, the mine owners just said, "How about no?" and shut the whole thing down in 1902. Despite its modest size and wholesome prairie vibes, Van Meter was about to become the center of one of the weirdest, creepiest, and most unexplained events in American cryptid history. The first sighting of the Van Meter visitor took place in the early hours of September 29th, 1903. The witness was a man named Ulysses Griffith. Griffith was in his mid-30s, a well-respected figure in town. He and his brother owned a local vehicle and farming equipment business, Griffith Brothers Implements, and he served on the village council. He was known for being honest, dependable, and fair-minded. Local records even described him as having a, quote, kindly and considerate spirit and business integrity beyond question. Basically, he was the kind of guy you would want as a character witness, or as a cryptid witness. You see, at around 1 a.m., Griffith was returning to Van Meter after a business trip. While driving through the quiet, empty streets of the town, something caught his eye, something that didn't belong. Up on the roof of the Mather and Gregg building, in the center of town, he noticed a light. Not a soft glow from like a street lamp or a lantern, but a sharp, unnatural light shining from a place where no light had ever been before. It cut through the darkness and cast eerie, shifting shadows across Main Street. Griffith slowed down and watched it closely. His first thought was that someone might be trying to break in. Burglars, maybe. But as he approached, the light suddenly shifted, leaping across the street to the roof of a different building. as if it had jumped through the air in the blink of an eye. And just as quickly as it appeared, it vanished. Griffith shared his experience the next day, but at the time it was chalked up to a strange, isolated incident. Maybe it was a trick of the light, maybe fatigue after a long trip, who knows. It was odd, sure, but nothing anyone felt the need to panic over. That would change very soon.
That it would. Just one night later, in the early mornings of September 30th, the town's doctor, Dr. Alcott, was jolted awake around 12:30 a.m. by a blinding light shining through his bedroom window. Startled and suspicious, Alcott he reached for his gun, which was described as being of immense proportions.
If you want a gun, folks, you want one of immense proportions.
Compensating much? So he grabbed his immense proportion gun and he headed outside, thinking he was about to confront a burglar. But what he saw was unlike anything he'd ever encountered. Standing in the darkness behind a beam of light was a creature, part man, part beast. It was enormous, with large bat-like wings. The light, he realised, wasn't coming from a lantern or a flashlight. It was emanating from a single blunt horn in the centre of the creature's forehead. Frozen with fear and unsure what this thing was or what it wanted, Dr. Alcott did what any good doctor would do and just started blasting. So he shot 5 times, but the creature didn't flinch. The bullets had no effect whatsoever. Panicked, the doctor he ran back inside and he bolted the doors, locked the windows, and he just waited the rest of the night out in silence. By morning, the town was abuzz. Dr. Alcott, he was a respected member of the community, not someone, known for spinning tall tales. Those who had heard about Ulysses Griffith's strange encounter the night before, they started connecting the dots. Of course, there were still skeptics. There always are. But more sightings had to be more than a coincidence. Whatever this thing was, though, it hadn't finished its visit to Van Meter.
Strange lights, shooting it. It does nothing. Very, very weird. The next person to face the Van Meter visitor was Clarence Dunn. Of all of the main witnesses, Dunn was perhaps the most widely respected. He graduated from Adel High School in 1895, then went on to teach in the public school system while continuing his own studies at Capital City Commercial College, where he graduated in 1901. By 1903, he was working as a cashier at the Van Meter Bank. Even after the incident, Dunn's reputation continued to grow over the years. His honesty, intelligence, and steady hand earned him a long-standing role in the community. When the bank moved to nearby Adel in 1935, Dunn was promoted to manager, a role he held until poor health forced him to retire in 1947. Along the way, he served as mayor, treasurer, even head of the Van Meter Independent School District. The man practically was Van Meter. So, when strange reports started circulating around town, Dunn wasn't about to sit back and do nothing. On the night of Thursday, October 1st, 1903, Dunn left the safety of his home and took up watch inside the bank. He was convinced that the sightings might be nothing more than a rash of burglaries, overactive imaginations, stirred up by a few shady characters lurking around town. Either way, though, he was ready to find out. And he brought his shotgun just in case. I hope it was of immense proportions. He settled in for the night, looking at the windows, prepared to wait out whatever came. As with the 2 previous encounters, the activity started around 1 a.m. The town clock struck 1, and almost immediately, Dunn heard something. An eerie, gasping sound that seemed to come from nowhere in particular. He later described it as someone strangling. But before he could pinpoint the source, a sudden, blinding light shone directly through the front window of the bank, hitting Dunn full in the face. It was so bright and abrupt, he was momentarily blinded. Then, just as quickly, the beam swung away, darting across the room like it was scanning the area.
Like Predator.
As his eyes began to adjust, Dunn saw something emerge in the glow, a large, shadowy form taking shape. Whatever it was massive. Before he had time to think, the light snapped back to him. That was enough. Dunn raised his shotgun and fired point blank towards the creature. He didn't even open the window. He didn't go outside. He just let the blast rip through the glass, shattering it along with part of the window frame. Then, silence. Just like that, the creature and the light vanished. At dawn, a full search was conducted, but there was no sign of the creature. Dunn had hoped he'd hit it, but nothing remained. No blood, no body. Just a series of strange tracks left behind outside the bank. In true cryptid hunter fashion, Dunn made plaster casts of the prints. They were huge, tree-toed, and over 15 inches long. Unfortunately, those casts, which Dunn reportedly took, they are missing as of today.
That's a shame. Later that same night, so October 1st, 1903, not long after Dunn's close encounter at the bank, another Van Meter resident was jolted awake by a strange and awful sound. It was a harsh, rasping sound, echoing from just outside the second-story room above Main Street. The room belonged to O.V. White. Now, White, he lived above the Fisher and White hardware and furniture store, which he co-owned, and by now he'd no doubt heard the rumours spreading around town. Something strange was stalking Van Meter, something unnatural. So when he heard the commotion outside, he didn't waste any time. He grabbed his gun and he rushed to the window. As his eyes adjusted to the darkness, White spotted movement. Just 15 feet away, perched on a cross beam of a telephone pole, was a figure, a large, shadowy silhouette. He took aim. White was a skilled marksman known for his steady hand. He lined up the shot, exhaled slowly, and pulled the trigger. But instead of falling, the creature turned its light on him. The same piercing beam described by Griffith, Alcott, and Dunn now pierced through the darkness, blinding White and flooded his room with an unearthly glow. His shot had done nothing. No pain, no reaction. If anything, it seemed to just wake the thing up. Then came the smell. White said the creature gave off a foul, overpowering odour. It filled the air and it seemed to cloud his senses, leaving him disoriented and stunned.
The sound of the gunshot also woke White's neighbour, Sidney Gregg, who had been asleep across the street in his store. Startled, he hurried to the door to see what was going on. He looked out onto Main Street and froze. There, descending the telephone pole like some enormous parrot, was the creature. Gregg watched as it used its beak to climb down the pole with strange, jerking movements. Once on the ground, the thing stood upright, and Gregg estimated it had to be at least 8 feet tall. Its forehead beam shone as brightly as a locomotive headlamp, sweeping the street in the same searching motion witnessed by others. The creature's wings, large and leathery, beat the air in heavy flaps as it moved. Then, without warning, it leapt forward. Not walked, but leapt, like a kangaroo, covering great distances in powerful bounds. Gregg could only watch, frozen in disbelief. And then, almost as if to anchor him back to reality, the fast mail train came roaring through town, right on time. Its familiar thunder rattled the streets. The creature, startled by the unfamiliar noise, crouched low, as if preparing to spring off. It hesitated for just a moment, then dropped onto all fours and ran off towards the edge of town, towards the old coal mine. With wings extended, it leapt into the air and disappeared into the night. Only after it was gone did Gregg remember he had a gun, which is a bit late that he only remembers now. Having said that, other people tried shooting it. Didn't do jack shit.
Yeah, no effect.
By then, the Van Meter visitor was long gone, and if it stayed in town any longer that night, no one else saw it.
Now, but the next day, Van Meter was crackling with energy, part excitement, part fear, and a healthy dose of wild speculation. So theories flew in every direction. Professor Martin, who taught at the Southside High School, he offered a bold idea. The creature might be a prehistoric survivor, something straight out of the dinosaur age. And it wasn't just townsfolk seeing things anymore. Over at the old coal mine on the edge of town, the night crews had heard stories of their own. So the mine had been shut down for years at this point, but a tile and brick factory had operated on the property right next to it. Workers had long reported strange noises coming from the abandoned shafts, deep, echoing sounds. They described them as Satan and his regiment of imps were coming forth for battle.
Wow.
Which is the best quote
That
I've ever read.
rocks.
It's so good, isn't it?
And that must have been such a freaky sound, though.
I
would have
know,
loved
right?
to have heard it.
So that eerie chorus reached a fever pitch in the early hours of Saturday, October 3rd. The factory's operation manager, J.L. Platt Jr., was on site when the familiar rumblings began again, just before 1 a.m. Rain fell on and off, and the moon, nearly full, peeked through the breaks of the clouds. Drawn by the sounds, Platt moved cautiously towards the mine's edge. He was no stranger to these shafts. He knew they could plunge hundreds of feet straight down or twist off into the darkness, hiding pockets of toxic gas, freezing water, and other deadly hazards. But that night, something else was waiting. The noises grew louder, and then, without warning, a massive creature emerged from the mine. Just as Platt caught sight of it, a second, slightly smaller monster followed close behind.
They had a baby.
Oh.
It's just a baby.
Both glowed with that same dazzling light, blinding, unnatural, and terrifying. Platt watched as the creatures spread their wings and sailed off into the sky.
But this time, Platt wasn't alone. Workers just 660 feet away also witnessed the very same thing. Some even moved in behind Platt for a better look. The entire factory this time saw those creatures emerge out of the mine, head off.
They all seen it.
The monsters, with their horn-like appendages glowing like headlights, vanished into the dark. But their mistake had been made. They'd revealed their lair.
Oh.
They found them in the mines. You might say the men dug too greedily and too deep in the mines.
They woke something in the darkness.
Shadow and flame.
Oh, nice.
Word spread quickly. Men across town grabbed their coats, wide-brimmed hats, and the biggest guns they owned of immense proportions. The plan was simple. Wait at the mine and kill the creatures when they returned. I love how they're like, we shot it multiple times. Let's try it again.
Have we tried again?
Exactly. We obviously didn't try and shoot it enough.
Yeah.
That's the problem. So the plan was simple. Wait at the mine and kill the creatures when they returned. As they moved through the rainy streets, lights flicked on across Van Meter. A whole town began keeping watch. And then the long night began. The hours dragged on. No creatures. Just the quiet, steady patter of the rain. Then, just before 6 a.m., someone spotted something. A massive figure appeared near the mine, nearly 8 feet tall, with enormous bat-like wings. Moments later, the second creature followed. The waiting men opened fire. A storm of bullets cracked through the early morning air. So many shots, it was said, quote, the reception received would have sunk the Spanish fleet. The monsters responded with more of those bizarre, deafening sounds, unearthly and disorienting. And then came the stench. The same overpowering odor from before rolled through the air, sickly and strange. Still, the men fired again and again and again. But the creatures didn't fall. Instead, as calmly as they had arrived, the monsters turned and descended back into the mine. The final shot rang out, echoing into silence. And just like that, they were gone. By Saturday, October 3rd, 1903, Van Meter was ablaze with rumours of excitement, terror, and surely this can't be real skepticism. Something had to be done before full-scale panic set in. The solution, lock the thing up. If guns don't do anything, just gotta lock it up and throw away the key. A force of men was assembled to barricade the mouth of the old coal mine, the very place where the visitor seemed to sleep by day and defy bullets by night. Cement, bricks, rock, and timber, anything they could find, was hauled to the entrance of the mine. Some men watched the pitch-black mine entrance, ready with their weapons in case the creatures emerged. Others hurriedly began, brick by brick, stone by stone, to block up the entrance. If the monsters called the mine home, then sealing it off felt like the fastest and quietest way to put the whole nightmare to rest. Just forget about it. Town meetings had toyed with grander ideas, poison, dynamite, you name it. But after watching bullets bounce off those creatures, the simpler plan prevailed.
Have we tried a bigger gun?
Yeah, more immense poison. So they decided to bury them alive. Now, whether the visitor and its companion found another escape or still lie entombed in those depths remain a mystery. One day, we might learn the answer if anyone dares reopen that mouth of darkness. I would love to go to that mine today that they bricked up.
I know, it'd be awesome, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So it was the very next day after they sealed the mine, on Sunday, October 4th, 1903, in the Des Moines Daily News, they ran the first and only article on the Van Meter visitor. It was penned by H.H. Phillips, a man whose credentials couldn't be more solid. In a November 1902 article, residents even praised him as a very popular postmaster. Phillips' dispatch captured the town's raw terror and disbelief. Without it, this story it might have vanished, just like the visitor itself. A letter to the editor, it did later challenge his credibility, but Phillips, like Griffith, Alcott and Dunn, was known by all as honest and dependable. Now, sadly, Phillips, he never followed up. No articles chronicled the weeks after the mine was sealed. No interviews with relieved townsfolk. No closure.
Leaves so many questions. Exactly. Yeah. What was this thing they buried alive?
I know. Yeah.
In the mine. This truly is like an episode of the X-Files.
Yeah, it's good.
It's awesome. So, what was the Van Meter visitor? Well, tinfoil hats at the ready. As you know yourself, as creepy and chaotic as this thing was, the townsfolk never managed to catch it, kill it, or even really understand what it was. That means we're left with witness reports, local lore, and a whole lot of theories. Some say it was mass hysteria. Others think it was a misidentified animal. Then you've got the supernatural crowd. It was a demon, a ghost, or even the old devil himself flapping up from the underworld and paying a visit to Iowa. Then there's the classic alien theory, because of course there is. And then there's my personal favorite, that it was some sort of prehistoric survivor, a living pterosaur or pterodactyl that somehow dodged extinction and decided to show up next to a brickyard in small town Iowa in 1903. A few cryptozoologists floated this theory, and it's fun to imagine, but we got dinosaurs, they went extinct around 65 million years ago, and there's zero physical evidence to suggest otherwise. It's probably not. So let's back up for a second. Let's talk about mass hysteria. We've seen it before. Salem! And we'll probably see it again. It tends to brew in small, tight-knit communities where anxiety simmers just under the surface. When people are already on edge, maybe it's economic stress, fear of change, or just the eerie quiet of a town that goes still after sundown, it doesn't take much. One strange noise, one flicker of light, one trusted voice saying, "I saw it with my own eyes." That's all it takes to ignite a full-blown panic. Fear loves company, and panic is contagious. But still, hysteria only gets you so far, because, well, this whole story, it wasn't a one-off. Around the same time as the Van Meter visitor struck, people across the United States were seeing very similar things. So let's take a quick tour. In California, there's the legend of the Lake Elizabeth monster. The story goes that the devil himself created the lake and left one of his pets inside. Swim too deep and you might just slip into a secret passage to the underworld. Fitting since the lake sits right on the San Andreas fault line. Between 1830 and 1886, there were reports of a creature with bat wings, the neck of a giraffe, the head of a bulldog, and a stench so bad it could clear a crowd. Ranchers fled, property was abandoned. People were terrified.
There was also sightings of a creature in Maryland called the Snallygaster. So its roots...
Great name.
I know, right? Its roots go back to 18th century German immigrants who called it the Schneidergast, the quick spirit. Over time, it evolved into something weirder. By 1909, the newspapers were describing a creature with tentacles, hooked claws, a beak like a bird of prey, and massive wings. It swooped down, snatched livestock, and occasionally the odd child or two.
Ooh.
And vanished, leaving only blood and feathers. And children's shoes, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Oh, and apparently it laid eggs in the woods as well, which is just a nice little extra bit to the cryptid folklore.
Little egg. And of course, the Jersey Devil. Born from colonial-era folklore, the cursed 13th child of a woman named Mother Leeds. It sprouted wings, hooves, and a forked tail and a goat-like head, then flew off into the New Jersey pine barrens, never to be caught. Much like the Snallygaster, the legend exploded in the early 1900s, thanks to the breathless headlines about sightings, tracks, and terrified townsfolk. Even the Philadelphia Zoo offered a reward for its capture. These monsters, Snallygaster, Jersey Devil, they're not just about creatures. They're about fear. Fear of the unknown, of the wilderness, fear of change. And sometimes they were helped along by a little push or a full-on shove from the media. Because nothing sells like a monster, baby!
Now, before we move on to other possible theories, I want to just take us to Utah and the so-called Stansbury Island creature, seen in, 1903. A tall, winged, glowing, walking nightmare flapping across the night sky. Again, same year, again, wings, and again, the light. So if it was just hysteria, it was pretty synchronized, which raises the question, how do people in different places imagine the same creature?
Yeah, I mean, these are not places that are terribly close to each other. Maryland, you're talking California, you're talking Utah.
And it's not like today
Jersey,
where stories are like with like social media stuff, it spreads so quickly. Like
exactly, so it's not like these people would be calling each other.
Exactly, yeah.
Then there's the old standby idea of the Van Meter visitor. It was a hoax. Maybe some clever pranksters with a homemade costume, phosphorus paint, and a cruel sense of humor were behind it all. the local paper did run stories that dialed up the panic. But if it was a hoax, it was a pretty good one. It spanned several nights, it spooked armed men, it drew fire, and didn't die. And no one ever confessed. So it's a lot of effort for a prank with no payoff. I don't believe it was a prank.
Unless the pranksters got sealed in the mine.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, let me out. Just goofing around, guys.
It's just a prank, bro.
Or maybe it wasn't a monster at all. If someone today told you they saw a flying creature with a blinding light on its head, moving in strange patterns and disappearing without a trace, you wouldn't think, oh, that's a cryptid. You would think that's an alien.
Yeah.
Some modern theorists believe the Van Meter visitor might have been an early UFO encounter. This was before Roswell, before Close Encounters, before even the word alien extraterrestrial existed. So, who knows? And finally, let's get back to realistic theories. That maybe it was just a bird. Sandhill cranes and great blue herons can grow massive, 6-foot wingspans, long-ass legs, eerie cries. Spot one in the dark, true foggy eyes, and after a few pints, you might not see a bird. You might see a demon. But cranes don't glow. They don't stink of sulfur. And they definitely don't burrow into the ground and vanish. Or live in mines. Whatever it was, the Van Meter visitor came and went without a trace, leaving behind bullet casings, panicked headlines, and one big flapping question mark. Maybe it was a bird, maybe it was prank, or maybe, just maybe, some things really do go bump into the night. Because this case does remind me of a friend of the podcast, the Mothman. People who initially reported it, were all like high society, who were trusted people in the community, like big dogs. And then you have like the 600 people who were in the factory.
You're right, yeah.
So it's not like this was seen by a few local crazy people, to mad yokes in town.
Multiple people
This
saw
was
it.
seen by hundreds of people saw this thing.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Like, honestly, I think that theory of misidentification is the strongest one. Like, what if some of the cryptid sightings we've been talking about was just like birds acting weird? So have you ever heard of the firehawks in Australia?
No.
Okay. So for thousands of years, Aboriginal Australians have passed down stories of raptors that don't just fear fire, but they actually start them. So these birds, specifically the black kite, the whistling kite, and the brown falcon, have been observed picking up smouldering sticks and dropping them into dry grass to spark new fires and flush out prey.
That's mad.
Isn't it?
That's so cool.
There's actually some great photos of it online. Just like these falcons with like sticks on fire flying through
that rocks.
It's really cool.
Oh my god, I want to do that.
Right? And this isn't just folklore. In 2017, a study published in the Journal of Ethnobiology documented accounts from indigenous communities, firefighters, and land managers who've seen this behavior firsthand. So these birds aren't just following fire, they're spreading it deliberately.
Fuckers.
Now, like, I guess, like, if you've seen this in the dead of night, like you said, after a couple of pints, a huge bird, glowing embers trailing from his talons, smoke in the air, everything lit up, you could absolutely see how that might become a story about a flaming monster or like a phoenix blazing through the sky at night.
But that was in Australia.
That was in Australia. That
wasn't in Iowa.
That's not what we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, could one of those brown kites or black kites or falcons, whatever, withstand a shotgun blast of immense proportions?
Exactly. I don't think so. I don't think so.
Now we done.
Fuck.
So there you go, folks. That is the story of the Van Meter visitor. It's a really crazy cryptid tale. Fascinating. I would love to go to that mine. If anybody lives near Van Meter, go to that mine and take some pictures. Maybe put your ear to the mine entrance. See what if you can hear anything.
See if you can hear the imps and Satan battling it out.
Satanic chorus. Yeah, that rocks. Oh, by the way, much like Point Pleasant did with Mothman, the town of Van Meter leaned in to embrace it. Embrace your weirdness. The Van Meter Visitor Festival was first held in 2013, and every September since, the town has celebrated its strange and spooky past. Around the time, at the end of September, start of October, of course, when the creature was spotted. So if you're in the area or for a road trip, this year's festival, 2025, will be held September 27th. And if you go, tell them that Chapter Podcast sent you. I was looking at on the Facebook page.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't look like what I imagine a Point Pleasant festival is like.
Well, do you know what? It's not there yet. But that's because people don't know about it. But after this podcast, more people know about it.
Yes, folks. That's it. Go tell everybody to listen to this episode of the podcast and make sure, if you're looking for a new thing. I mean, so there's pictures of they do a tour, like a guided tour. You have somebody here. Keith, this looks like someone dressed like you. She's dressed like a witch or something. No, that's definitely you there.
Oh, there I am.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like you do a walking tour of the town. This guy probably tells you the story of the legend and points out, where the monster was. Oh, is that the mine?
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, that's where the mind. Okay, there's pictures. Folks, go on to Van Meter Visitor Festival. You can go onto their Facebook page and they have pictures uploaded. That's where the mine was.
That's cool.
Okay, it's very green. It's greener than I was expecting. For some reason, I thought it would be like a desert. But you can see there's an old building there. Perhaps that was the factory. The brick factory, was it?
There was a brick factory beside it, yeah.
That could be the remains of the brick factory. Now it's just an old ruined building overgrown with trees, and there's cows munching down on some grass nearby. And it seems like there's a eating competition or something, which I'm actually more interested in. But you know what I would love to do?
What?
We should do it maybe, or dream plans for the podcast, is you and I go to all of these weird festivals, creature festivals.
That'd be great. That'd be
like
awesome.
a Bigfoot festival, Mothman festival, Loch Ness one. All that kind of shit.
That'd be great.
Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah. Oh, I guess if any of the organisers from Van Meter is looking for some guest speakers and wants to fly us over, pay for accommodation, give us free food,
also give us
entertain us.
Yes, exactly. And pay us many thousands of dollars.
Many monies.
Yes, we do not do things for free. But we really will take anything. All right, folks. Thanks so much for listening.
20 bucks, okay.
Yeah, exactly. I'll do it. Thanks so much for listening, folks. As always, please enjoy the podcast. There you go. Let us know your thoughts on the Van Meter Visitor, and we'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, and I'll see you.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.